Good day to you. The next chapter that we're going to focus is learning and the learning organization. What are the advantages of a learning organization? What is a learning organization? How it is different from your traditional training and development culture? So let us take a look at this chapter, which goes on to elaborate how you can compete in the market if you are a learning organization. Now let us start with some basic approaches, what we call the learning theory. Normally it is defined as a stimulus response approach. To start off with, we human beings behavior based on certain stimuli and we react according to this stimuli and we are conditioned. So we learn based on our behaviors. Second approach is an information processing approach, wherein our outcome is based on our understanding whether a positive or negative outcome is attached to a particular situation, and we continue doing it. We process whether it is positive or negative and we learn from such incident. This is the cognitive or the information processing approach. Third is the social learning approach, wherein our actions are based on imitation. We learn certain types of behavior and understand information based on imitation by individuals or from systems that we encounter in day-to-day lives, and we continue with those behaviors. That is the social learning approach. Now, what are the implications of training design? Now, first and foremost, the individual should be motivated to learn. What is the advantage for him if he learns? What is the way forward if he undergoes a learning plan? So clearly he should be motivated to learn. So the goals and objectives of this learning should be clearly outlined. Learning should be structured and paced. There should be a design, structure, an idea which is lined out, and the pacing of this learning program should be significant if you have to get any results. Exposure to learning materials and interactive input. You have to give state-of-the-art learning materials and interactive input as what you're going through right now. So let's say as advanced learning techniques, wherein you are exposed to different types of learning materials and timely relevant feedback is given to the individual on his performance, positive and negative reinforcements to be done, wherein if he does certain positive aspects, you encourage him and give him critical feedback wherein the areas he needs to improve. Active participation in the learning experience. So all aspects of the teams, all the members involved in the training design, they should take an active participation in the whole learning experience. Now let's take a look at what are the stages of learning. This is an interesting model by itself. So unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, unconscious competence, and conscious competence. Let's take a very basic example as to how you started riding a bicycle. When you were a kid, you didn't even know that you had something called a bicycle, so you do not know you cannot ride a bicycle. That can be classified into the first category, unconscious incompetence. You were not conscious that you were incompetent. Then you started looking at a bright colored bicycle which is attractive for a kid. Then you say, hey, I'm not able to ride the bicycle. So it is conscious incompetence. You are conscious that you are incompetent. Next comes a stage wherein you start pedaling your bicycle, then slowly and steadily you gain control and then you start riding it. The first ride that you have is always memorable because you are totally focusing on it. You're not sure whether you learned it the right way, the balance and all aspects of riding a bicycle. So you are conscious, you are competent. And fourth stage is unconscious competence, wherein you just take a bicycle and ride it without even thinking twice. So it becomes a stage wherein you are unconsciously competent. This is the 4 stages of learning. So what is a learning curve and how it is significant in designing training programs? A learning curve is a graph showing the relationship between the time spent in learning and the level of competence attained. It describes the progress and variable pace of learning. This gives you an understanding of how far some individual has learned and what are the training initiatives that needs to be tuned according to the learning curve, and what are the different variables involved in order to deliver the maximum result as part of a learning program. What are the uses of a learning curve? It suggests typical patterns in the acquisition of a given skill. How fast or how slow is a particular individual or a particular component of a program being delivered as part of a training program. So to illustrate the progress of a given trainee's learning proficiency, to plan the size of the chunks to be taught, whether it's to be broken down into significant pieces for the learner to assimilate, or is it to be given as one whole component. Now let us look at the learning cycle, which is called the experiential learning cycle by David Cole. It starts with the concrete experience. We undergo a particular type of experience in the workplace, then we reflect and we observe, then we take it into conceptualization, we internalize it, and active experimentation, wherein we repeat the behavior to get the same outcome. And this is a cycle, starting from an experience, we reflect and observe and we conceptualize, then moving on to everyday practice. This is internalized, and this is a cycle for different types of behaviors to get an output which is desired from an organizational point of view. What is transfer of learning? Unless and until the learning is transferred into one specific output which is beneficial to the organization and the individual, transfer of learning does not happen. So transfer of learning refers to the extent to which newly learned information or skills have been transferred from the learning context and learning stage to the application to a specific task. Let's say you learned on a new technique of production. It is not really useful to the organization or the individual unless it is applied to the workplace and a significant change in productivity is achieved. So that is supposed to be transfer of learning. Let's see two basic approaches to transfer of learning. Let us take the classic example of learning a foreign language. It's by transfer by specific correspondence of elements. You learn specific phrases which can be used in particular context. Let's say you're calling a cab. So these are fixed phrases which can be used in a particular context. The downside of it is that if it doesn't fit with the standard environment, if the phrase that you're using is not being reciprocated and there is no answer from the other end, so it goes for a toss and the entire situation is out of control. So what is the implication of this particular approach to actual learning process? The problem is that you have to tune the training environment to actual practice. So you learn practices which you can actually replicate in the actual work environment. So transfer by principle, you learn the nuances of a particular approach. All aspects of it are learned. Say when you're learning a language, you learn the grammar and the intricacies involved so that you can manage the situation whatsoever while you're actually delivering the language and you're interacting with people. So what is the implication for this principle in training and designing programs is that you take into account the actual work scenario and build your training techniques based on the various factors so that the learner can replicate those new initiatives in the actual workplace. Now moving on to whole or part learning, whether the whole content is to be delivered at one stretch in one big chunk, or is it to be broken into parts so that the learner has time to slow down, learn and assimilate and give an effective transfer of learning. Let us look at another learning style by Honey and Mumford, and they are classified into activists who believe in saying, having an experience and they learn, the reflectors who learn by reviewing the experience, and the theorists who conclude from the experience. When it is positive, they learn from it, and the pragmatists who plan the next step, that is, if it is good enough, they will do it. So these are the four different learning styles and learners according to Honey and Mumford. Let's take a look at Kolb's learning styles inventory, wherein he has classified learners based on their preferences on the learning style. Now, this is divided into four quadrants and four styles. The convergent type of learner likes to learn by applying the theories and abstract concepts by applying to practical ways. Now the assimilative guy is comfortable with learning the abstract concepts and theories. Accommodative guy likes to learn by doing things, and divergent guy likes to reflect and learn in a lateral way. So Combs defined these types of four learning styles based on which individuals have different learning styles, and training programs need to be modified according to these styles so that the results are effective.